Mara Velasquez stood at the observation deck of Theta 7's command tower, the dim emergency lights casting long shadows across his tired face. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the colony sprawled across a jagged alien landscape, its half-destroyed structures trembling under the relentless winds that screamed through the canyons. Dust storms swirled like pale ghosts, whispering threats to anyone who dared walk the cracked corridors of this dying world. Theta 7 had been a jewel once, a mining colony built around precious isotopes that shimmered like frozen starlight, but now it was a graveyard. The human population had dwindled to a few thousand, many of them hiding in bunkers or clinging to automated shelters designed to shield them from both environmental collapse and alien marauders. Mara ran his fingers over the comm panel, the worn metal cold beneath his palm. Every button, every switch bore the scars of decades. He was the last commander left, the last officer whose squad had survived the initial slaver raids that had torn the colony apart. His uniform, once crisp and sharp, was now scorched and patched. He could feel the weight of hundreds of lives pressing against his chest, a weight heavier than any armor. "Status?" he asked, his voice hoarse, carrying the brittle authority of someone who had given orders far longer than he had slept. Lieutenant Kale's holographic display flickered into view. Her form, worn but upright, hovered above the console like a ghostly sentinel. "All perimeter shields are down. Forward docking bays breached. The slavers' corvettes have established orbital blockade. Incoming transmissions are jammed, sir. Theta 7 is..." Isolated. Mara's jaw clenched. Isolated. The word tasted bitter. The colony had been a beacon of human ingenuity in the outer rim, a fragile attempt to expand the species beyond the core worlds. And now, after 5 centuries of careful survival, it was a trap, a coffin waiting to be sealed. He moved to the viewport again, staring out at the blackness between stars. Somewhere in that void, perhaps 100 light-years away, Terran fleets might still exist or might not. The tale said the dreadnoughts of the human diaspora had all vanished into myth, lost to time, decay, and war. And yet... The thought gnawed at him, the last ember of hope burning stubbornly. He lowered his voice, almost a whisper, though Kale's calm picked up every syllable. "If no one comes, if no help comes." Kale's hologram tilted, her lips pressed in a line Mara had come to read like scripture. "Then we fight. That's all we can do." He nodded, though inside he felt the cold squeeze of inevitability. They had stockpiled weapons, old human war machines rebuilt from scraps, but against the alien slavers' advanced fleets, they were nothing more than sparks against the night. Still, the human instinct to resist, to survive against impossible odds, flared in his chest. It had been drilled into him, inherited across centuries. Humans were not meant to bow quietly. The first explosions hit as Mara activated the colony's alert systems. Thin blue light streaked across the sky, laser fire painting the clouds in bursts of death. Mara could hear the distant hum of energy shields shattering, the distant wails of civilian panic over the comm lines. His stomach churned, but his hands were steady. He would need every second, every calculation to orchestrate whatever scraps of defense remained. He ran through the colony's evacuation plans mentally, knowing they were already obsolete. The alien ship's orbital positions would intercept any shuttle attempting escape. The only chance was to consolidate civilians into the subterranean shelters, seal them behind every layer of human engineering they had left, and hope. Hope that somehow, someway help would come. Mara paused for a moment, placing his hand against the viewport. The stars outside were indifferent, scattered diamonds in an ocean of black. Yet in that silence he felt something, an almost imperceptible alignment, a rhythm in the chaos. He whispered, barely audible even to himself, "If this is it, then let it not be for nothing." Below him, Theta 7 burned. Fires licked at the edges of what had once been marketplaces, factories, and laboratories. Smoke curled skyward like praying hands, a signal both desperate and defiant. Mara's mind raced. Every choice now was a gamble. Every action might be the last. And then, amid the comm chatter and the storm of destruction, he made a decision. He keyed the colony's primary distress beacon. It was archaic technology, barely functional, its signals vulnerable to interference, but it was all they had. The SOS message would pierce the void, traveling faster than the shuttle pods, faster than their desperate fleet could hope. It was a call into emptiness, a prayer cast across 1,000,000 kilometers of cold, uncaring space. Mara spoke the coordinates. embedding in the transmission a message of human persistence. This is Theta-7, colony lost, survivors clinging. If there is any Terran vessel out there, answer. Do not let us die forgotten. Humanity remembers its own, he paused. His chest tightened as the beacon engaged, a pulse of light and sound radiating into the void, a single spark in an infinite darkness. Kale's voice trembled. Commander, do you really think anyone will come? Mara turned slowly, the weight of his years, his failures, and his duty pressing into his frame. His eyes, a shade of steel that had seen too much, softened as he looked at her. I don't know, but we send the call anyway. That's what humans do. We reach for hope even when the universe tells us to stop. He turned back to the viewport, eyes scanning the stars for signs of impossible miracles. The colony shook again as another alien corvette passed overhead, its shadow eclipsing the dying sun. The lights flickered. Mara's hand clenched around the rail, knuckles white. Fear and faith collided in a single pulse. And somewhere, deep in the blackness beyond, a faint distortion shimmered for an instant. An anomaly too quick, too strange to explain. Mara caught it in the corner of his eye and his heart skipped a beat. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was everything, he whispered almost to himself. Not luck. Someone wanted us to live. The colony trembled. The stars watched. And in the void, the call for help sailed outward, unheard, except by forces that might not yet have forgotten humanity. And somewhere in the dark, the human will refuse to die. The alien corvettes had learned quickly. Within hours of Theta-7's distress beacon igniting the darkness, they adjusted orbital patterns, forming an unbreakable lattice around the colony. Each ship was a predator, every sensor a predatory eye. The hum of their engines vibrated through the ground like a heartbeat of oppression, a reminder that no human ingenuity alone could lift the walls of isolation. Mara Velasquez moved through the command hub with measured urgency, issuing orders as if the act of speaking could summon hope from thin air. Civilians scuttled through the corridors, dragging children and supplies into the subterranean bunkers, their faces pale with fear, their hands shaking but determined. The human instinct to survive was in full swing. The colony may have been crippled, but its people still carried fire. Lieutenant Kale, perimeter drones to maximum interception mode. Mara barked. Do not let them breach the lower levels. Every second counts. Kale's hologram flickered, a phantom of composure amid chaos. Understood, sir, but they're adapting faster than we can anticipate. If this continues, we'll be overrun in 20 minutes, maybe less. Mara gritted his teeth. 20 minutes. Enough for a miracle or nothing at all. He could feel it in his bones. Time was a fragile thread fraying in the hands of an uncaring universe. And yet he refused to yield. Humans did not collapse quietly. Even in their despair, they became more human, braver, cleverer, unwilling to surrender the flame that lit their species across a million worlds. Below the command deck, Theta-7's defenses activated, automated turrets whirred to life, their sensors locking onto alien vessels as energy pulses carved the sky. Mara watched on the tactical displays, eyes scanning the approaching shadows, noting patterns of attack. Every moment was a lesson, every move a challenge to outwit creatures who had never understood subtlety. Ingenuity or defiance. In the midst of the frenzy, Mara allowed himself a brief glance at the civilian shelters. Children huddled with parents, whispered prayers slipping past trembling lips. A grandmother wiped dust from a child's cheek and muttered almost instinctively, God, keep them safe. Mara's chest tightened. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the universe, a current of order flowed beneath the chaos, a subtle intelligence that had guided humanity to survive this long. And yet, the slaver fleet advanced, relentless. A corvette fired its first energy salvo, striking the outer shield generator with a sickening boom. Sparks rained down the command hub's walls and the deck shuddered. Mara's mind raced. If the shields failed, the colony's bunkers would be nothing but tombs. Prepare the secondary evacuation protocol, Mara ordered, his voice steady even as his stomach twisted. We consolidate into the core shelters. No one leaves until I give the command. Kale, activate orbital jammers. Let's make this as costly for them as possible. Kyle nodded, her fingers dancing across her holographic interface. Initiating now. We'll give them a fight. Mara allowed himself a heartbeat of grim satisfaction. The humans of Theta-7 were clever, adaptable, unbroken. Their will alone had transformed factories into fortresses and mining rigs into missile emplacements. Alien slavers might possess advanced technology, but they lacked human imagination, and that, Mara knew, could turn the tide even when hope seemed absent. As the first wave of slavers closed in, a shudder ran through the void. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a ripple across the stars as if reality itself had momentarily quivered. Mara caught it in the corner of his eye, his stomach tightening. He froze, hands hovering over the console. "What is that?" he murmured, more to himself than to Kale. The tactical display went wild. All sensors flared at once, tracking an anomaly emerging far beyond the slaver blockade. Mara squinted at the data feed, disbelief gnawing at him. The signature, it was human. Not just human, it was Terran. Ancient, colossal, almost mythical in its scale. The dreadnoughts of the diaspora. Thought lost, thought erased from history. Kale's voice trembled. "Commander." "It can't be." "The Valiant. Everyone said she was gone centuries ago." Mara's hands gripped the console, white-knuckled. "It is real, and it's coming for us." The anomaly shifted, a living shadow moving against the void's black canvas. Mara felt a surge of emotion, a mix of awe, fear, and uncontainable hope. The humans aboard Theta-7 were cornered, yet even in this corner, their species' essence flared. They fought not because they had to survive, but because survival was sacred. Because they were human. And then, just as the first corvette prepared to strike the secondary shield generator, a pulse of energy erupted from the anomaly. The void itself seemed to shudder as if recognizing a long-lost child returning home. Mara's tactical feed registered impossible speeds. The Terran dreadnought tore through space, bending the laws of physics with a majesty only humanity could command. The slaver fleet reacted, confusion rippling through their formations. Their coordinated attacks faltered, and for the first time in hours Mara allowed himself to breathe. Not relief, not victory, just recognition. Humans had always thrived in the impossible, he whispered, a tremor in his voice that felt too small for what he was seeing. Someone is answering. The crew around him froze, staring at the viewport as the massive silhouette of the dreadnought grew, its surface engraved with centuries of Terran history, the scars of battles long past yet brimming with life and purpose. Every weapon bay, every sensor array seemed infused with human will itself, a reminder that humanity, even when forgotten, never abandoned its own. Kale turned to him, eyes wide, voice barely a whisper. They came for us. Mara's lips tightened in a small, almost imperceptible smile. Hope, fragile and bright, ignited within him. The impossible was happening. Humanity had not turned its back. Somewhere in the darkness, a hand reached across centuries to lift them from the abyss, and in the black silence between stars, the humans had a thunder no one, not even gods, could ignore. The first shockwave ripped through Theta-7's orbit like a herald of divine reckoning. The slaver fleet's corvettes were obliterated before their weapons could even discharge, hulls vaporizing under the dreadnought's ancient yet terrifyingly efficient armament. Mara Velasquez pressed himself against the viewport as the void ignited with human fire, his heart hammering with disbelief and awe. The Valiant, the dreadnought thought lost to time, moved with terrifying grace, each of its engines a pulse of relentless purpose. Its cannons blazed, leaving streaks of molten alien metal drifting across the black sea of space. It was a monster of steel and willpower, yet Mara felt its presence as something more than mechanical, as if humanity itself had returned in colossal form, breathing, alive, aware of every life in Theta-7's battered bunkers. Yet even amidst this awe, Mara's mind churned with responsibility. The humans on the ground were safe for the moment, but for how long? Every second of inaction could mean death for someone still stranded above or below. Every move he hesitated to make could cost lives. The colony's civilians were fragile, and the slavers were clever, more than clever, ruthless. Mara had to remain the axis around which survival turned, even as the universe seemed to tilt toward miracle. "Commander, the civilians are stabilizing in the core shelters," Kyle reported, her voice tight. "Shields are holding for now. But the aftershocks, if another wave hits, the structures might collapse." And her words cut off as another tremor shook the command hub. The colony's fractured crust groaned under the energy pulse radiating from the dreadnought. Mara closed his eyes, fighting against the surge of guilt. We survive, Kale. We make it through this. And we keep them alive. That is our duty, our responsibility. The Valiant is here to give us a chance. We will not squander it. Below the command deck, civilians murmured prayers and whispered blessings, their voices tiny yet resolute against the backdrop of cosmic war. Mara could feel them even from his vantage point. He could hear the faint vibrations of hope embedded in fear, a rhythm older than humanity itself. It was a fragile melody, yet it had survived centuries of hardship, of isolation, of exile in the outer rim. The alien fleet, sensing the tide turning, attempted to regroup, but coordination faltered. Mara studied the tactical displays, noting how the slavers hesitated in the face of an opponent they did not understand. Humans. Impossible humans. That instinct, the unrelenting defiance, was what Mara had relied on for years. And now, he realized, the universe itself had sent a reminder. Humanity never surrendered, even in myth. Still, amidst this miracle, an internal storm brewed within him. Mara had always been a soldier, a tactician, a protector, but now he felt the strain of centuries pressing down, not on him personally, but on his species' legacy. Could humanity endure the outer rim's relentless darkness? Could they continue to reach for hope when miracles were so rare and fleeting? He clenched his fists. We endure, he whispered. We always have. We always will. And then came the alien counterattack, a salvo unlike anything Theta 7 had seen. Entire ships erupted in waves of destructive energy, aiming not only to destroy the colony but to test the dreadnought itself. Mara's fingers hovered over the emergency override systems, knowing the humans inside the bunkers could not withstand another strike. His chest tightened with helplessness, the raw fear of failure pressing against his spine. But the Valiant responded in kind. Its cannons flared like the eyes of a god, striking with precision that seemed almost prescient. The alien corvettes erupted in orange flames, leaving trails of wreckage drifting silently in the void. Mara watched, eyes wide, as a single ship attempted a kamikaze run toward Theta 7's surface. He felt the weight of thousands of lives in that instant. The civilians who could die if this projectile hit. The colonists who had prayed in bunkers, the children who might never see another sunrise, and yet, Mara saw the dreadnought shift. Its targeting systems flared. With a soundless but decisive motion, it intercepted the incoming corvette, obliterating it mid-trajectory. For a heartbeat, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Mara allowed himself a shiver of disbelief and gratitude. He turned to Kale, his eyes glimmering with a mixture of relief and unspoken question. Do you feel it? He asked, almost rhetorically. Kale hesitated, then nodded. The universe is watching. Mara swallowed hard. Not luck, not coincidence. Someone, something was guiding this moment. He didn't need to name it. The evidence was written across the stars, and somewhere in the dark reaches of human myth and memory, the divine whispered, not in thunder but in careful orchestration. A nudge, a protection, a reason hidden within chaos. But even as awe filled the command hub, Mara felt the other edge of his conflict, the fear that clung to human survival like a shadow. The dreadnought was unstoppable, yes, but it was only one ship, and the outer rim held dangers beyond comprehension. Humanity could not rely on miracles forever. They needed cunning. They needed resilience. And most importantly, they needed courage. The kind of courage that thrived in humans even when the stars themselves seemed indifferent. He walked along the observation deck, past the trembling civilians huddled in the corridors, past the exhausted engineers scrambling to maintain failing systems. Every face was etched with fear and determination. Every hand clutched the tools of survival. Mara felt pride surge through him. Humanity was never perfect. They were messy, stubborn, and reckless. Yet in that chaos they burned brighter than any star, a light no alien fleet, no black void could extinguish. Then came the sight that made his chest pound with a mixture of hope and dread. Through the viewport, he saw the dreadnought turn its gaze toward the largest alien capital ship, a massive flagship bristling with weapons. Its size alone could crush entire colonies, and yet it had advanced, merciless systems. It was the last pillar of the slavers' strength. Mara's pulse quickened. If the Valiant failed here, everything would fall. But failure was not an option Mara could entertain. Not for the civilians, not for the humans scattered across the rim, not for the species that had refused to bow to every impossible force the galaxy had thrown at them. he whispered to himself, almost in prayer. Not luck. Someone wanted us to survive. The dreadnought's first strike shattered the flagship's energy shields, a shockwave rattling Theta 7's surface and throwing Mara to the floor. Sparks flew from the consoles and alarms screamed across the command hub. Mara gritted his teeth, gripping the rail. The humans below held their breath in bunkers. The Valiant held its fire in perfect rhythm. The battle was not just mechanical, it was human ingenuity writ in steel. The dreadnought's every maneuver reflected centuries of human tactics, creativity, and courage encoded into its core. Mara realized that the ship itself was not merely a machine. It was humanity's defiance made manifest, a towering reminder that no matter how far the diaspora spread, the species' will could never be erased. And as the flagship of the alien slavers screamed in its final moments, Mara's eyes lifted to the black horizon beyond Theta 7. The void shimmered faintly, as though acknowledging humanity's audacity. Somewhere, deep and unnameable, a hand of order had guided the moment. And as fire rained across the void, Mara knew this was only the beginning of humanity's reckoning. The Valiant loomed over the alien flagship like a mountain of living steel, and Mara Velasquez could feel the tremors even through the reinforced floor of the command deck. Every system in Theta 7 hummed under the combined resonance of human ingenuity and raw power unleashed. Yet Mara knew this was not a victory, not yet. The alien fleet still had numbers, still had firepower, still had a ferocity that could overwhelm even the dreadnought if humanity faltered. "Commander," Kyle said, voice taut with urgency, "the fleet is reorganizing. They're concentrating fire toward the southern approach. If they breach Theta 7's orbit—" "They won't," Mara interrupted, though his jaw tightened. It was not arrogance, it was resolve. Humans did not cower at impossible odds. He scanned the tactical feeds, noting how each alien maneuver carried the arrogance of a species that had never faced relentless defiance before. Every human tactic, every trap, diversion, and countermeasure had been anticipated. But what they could not anticipate was the audacity of survival, the stubborn spark of human will. Below the deck, engineers and civilians alike braced for the worst, their eyes reflecting the firestorm outside. Mara walked among them, nodding, giving orders, infusing calm. He spoke in short sentences, crisp and clear, each syllable carrying the weight of centuries of survival instinct. "Reinforce the secondary shields. Prioritize civilian shelters, remember. Humanity fights in impossible odds." Kale's hologram shimmered beside him. "Sir, the dreadnought. It's moving again. Toward the fleet's center. If it engages the capital ships directly—" "Yes," Mara said, eyes narrowing. "It's not just moving. It's hunting." In the void beyond, the Valiant accelerated with impossible grace, weaving between corvettes and frigates as if the void itself bent to accommodate human will. Its weapons flared in symphonic precision, obliterating ships with minimal collateral damage. Mara felt a pulse of awe tinged with unease. The dreadnought's power was magnificent. But he knew, power without human cunning, without courage on the ground, was still incomplete. He turned to the tactical feed, scanning the surface of Theta 7. The civilians were still moving, still alive, but the colony's infrastructure was cracking under repeated shockwaves. Mara's stomach tightened. Every human life here was precious. Every choice mattered. "Prepare countermeasures for the southern breach," he ordered. "Set decoy drones along the canyon ridges. Force them into narrow corridors. Make them pay for every meter." Cal nodded, her expression a mix of relief and admiration, already in motion. Theta 7 won't go quietly. Even as the battle raged above, Mara allowed himself a rare glance at the night sky beyond the viewport. The stars were silent witnesses to human defiance, their distant light threading through the blackness like a tapestry of eternity. He whispered almost to himself, "Someone is watching, and perhaps someone wanted us to survive." But even amidst this miraculous return, Mara wrestled with an internal conflict. The Valiant could annihilate fleets, but it could not hold Theta 7. Humans had to act, had to fight, had to endure. It was not enough to be saved. They had to prove their will was unbroken, their ingenuity unmatched. Victory would be human, not delivered by legend or miracle alone. A sudden alert tore him from thought. One of the alien corvettes had broken formation, a kamikaze charge aimed directly at the colony's surface. Mara froze, calculating the odds, the angles, the time remaining. Seconds ticked away like a metronome counting toward disaster. Then came the Valiant's response. It shifted, a colossal silhouette against the stars, intercepting the kamikaze ship with surgical precision. Mara exhaled, the tension leaving him in a rush only to be replaced by renewed resolve. Survival was not luck. It was human will, human courage, and a touch of something vast, something guiding, something quiet, something divine. Not luck, Mara whispered, gripping the rail. Someone wanted us to live. The dreadnought's assault continued, striking with calculated brilliance, yet Mara knew this was merely the opening act. The alien flagship, though crippled, remained a threat. Its remaining corvettes adjusted their formation, preparing for a counteroffensive. Theta 7's orbit was a battlefield, and the humans below were the prize every alien sought to claim. Mara moved back to the main console, reviewing strategic options. Every calculation led to the same truth. Victory depended not on the dreadnought alone, but on coordination, courage, and sacrifice. The humans of Theta 7 had to act, and they would, because surrender was a language they did not speak. He glanced at Kaio, eyes meeting hers across the holographic shimmer. Ready the orbital drones for synchronized strikes. Timing has to be perfect. Theta 7 survives if we strike like humans, clever, relentless, precise. Kaio's form flickered, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Understood, sir. Let's show them why humans never give up. Below, civilians clutched one another, whispering prayers, holding children close. Mara could see hope flickering in their eyes. Not blind hope, human hope forged in struggle, strengthened by ingenuity and courage. Even in despair, they were unbroken. And then a new sound filled the command hub, a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through every human bone. The dreadnought was preparing its next strike, larger than before, aimed at the heart of the alien fleet. Mara felt it through him, a living pulse of humanity asserting itself against oblivion. He whispered, not for Kaio, not for the crew, but for himself. This is our moment. Not for luck, not for legend, for humanity. And in the silent void, Mara understood. The reckoning had only just begun, and humanity would write it in fire. Theta 7 trembled beneath the unrelenting assault of the alien fleet. The colony's once pristine canyons now lay scarred and blackened, the air thick with dust and acrid smoke from ruptured energy conduits. Mara Velasquez stood at the command hub's observation deck, jaw tight, eyes unblinking. The humans below were holding, but every second brought them closer to collapse. Still, he refused to waver. The Valiant had arrived, yes, but survival required more than awe. It required cunning, courage, and the relentless defiance that made humans human. Kaio's hologram flickered beside him. Sir, the flagship is attempting to escape. They've started retreat maneuvers toward the southern rift. If they regroup, Theta 7 won't survive the next strike. Mara's fingers drummed against the console, every motion precise, deliberate. The dreadnought was powerful, unstoppable in raw strength, but it could not navigate the nuances of Theta 7's fractured terrain. That was humanity's job. We're not letting them escape, he said, voice low and steady. Prepare the orbital drones for synchronized intercept. Theta 7 will not be abandoned. Not today, not ever. Below, humans moved with a desperate grace. Engineers in scorched uniforms sprinted across corridors, securing systems that were moments from collapse. Civilians clutched children close, whispering prayers into the dim glow of emergency lights. Mara felt the pulse of their courage, fragile yet unbreakable. Even in fear, they shone. And then the Valiant acted. Its massive silhouette shifted, engines glowing like liquid fire. Mara felt the sheer force of humanity itself radiating from the ship, a living testament to ingenuity, courage, and centuries of survival. With surgical precision, it targeted the alien flagship, striking at weak points Mara had identified only minutes ago. The flagship shuddered under the impact, a metallic scream echoing across the void. Mara's chest tightened. Even amid awe, doubt gnawed at him. The fleet was large, the aliens relentless. Could a single dreadnought, even one imbued with centuries of human experience, truly protect the colony? He forced himself to breathe. Humans did not rely on faith alone. They acted. They adapted. They survived. Commander, Kaio said, tension heavy in her voice. The southern breach. The rift, it's unstable. If we don't intercept the flagship there, the entire fleet could escape and Theta 7 will be left defenseless. Mara's mind raced. He could see the canyon rifts on the tactical feed. The jagged terrain, the collapsed mining rigs, the narrow choke points. He visualized the drone's paths, the timing, the angles. "We use the terrain," he said finally. "Force them into the rift. Make them fight human ingenuity, not just human firepower." Kale nodded, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "Understood, sir. Theta 7 survives because of you." Mara allowed himself a small, private smile. Survival was never a solitary act. Humans fought because they had each other, because they believed in something beyond themselves, because even in despair they clung to hope. He turned back to the viewport, eyes scanning the approaching alien ships. They were precise, dangerous, but they had never faced humans this determined. "Activate the drone arrays," Mara commanded. "Synchronize with the Valiant's trajectory. Time it perfectly. Strike only when I give the order." Below, the colony seemed to hold its collective breath. Mara imagined their fear, their courage, their hope, all converging in a single fragile moment. And then, as the alien flagship edged toward the rift, he gave the command. "Now." Theta 7's orbital drones surged like a swarm of fireflies unleashed in perfect coordination. Their paths intersected with the alien fleet at the precise points Mara had calculated, cutting off escape routes, forcing the flagship and its escorts into the canyon's narrow corridors. The Valiant followed, its weapons blazing with terrifying precision, slicing through alien hulls as if rewriting the rules of physics with each salvo. Mara's heart raced. He could see the civilians below, the engineers, the families all holding on. Every success of the drones, every shot from the dreadnought was a lifeline. And yet, amid the tactical brilliance, his internal conflict festered. Could humans truly survive beyond miracles? Could they endure when legends like the Valiant faded again into myth? He swallowed the doubt, focusing instead on action. "Keep the drones tight. Protect the flanks. The rift is our advantage. Use it." The alien flagship roared, its engines flaring in desperation. Mara felt a thrill of fear and immediately a surge of pride. Humans did not cower. They adapted. They persisted. They fought not because the odds favored them, but because survival was in their nature. And then a flash of brilliance. The dreadnought fired a concentrated salvo at the rift's narrowest point, creating a wall of energy that trapped the flagship and several escorts. The fleet faltered, trapped by its own hubris and by human ingenuity. Mara allowed himself a rare moment to breathe. "Sir," Kale said softly. "We did it. They're contained." Mara's eyes glimmered, but he did not relax. This was only a moment, a brief shining window in the darkness. Survival demanded constant vigilance. Humans had won a battle, but the war was far from over. He whispered almost reverently, "Not luck. Someone wanted us to live." Below, civilians whispered prayers. Above, the dreadnought's engines glowed like a living heartbeat. And Mara realized the truth. Survival was never given. It was claimed, fought for and earned through courage, ingenuity, and the relentless refusal to surrender. And as the rift swallowed the alien flagship, Mara knew the fight had only just begun, and humanity's fire would not be dimmed. Theta 7 shuddered beneath the echo of distant explosions, the colony's canyons trembling with each pulse from the Valiant's relentless assault. Mara Velasquez stood at the observation deck, jaw tight, eyes scanning the void. The alien fleet, though battered, was far from defeated. Every destroyed corvette was replaced by maneuvering frigates, capital ships recalibrating, learning, adapting to the human tactics they could not predict. Kale's hologram shimmered beside him. "Sir, they're regrouping. The flagship may be trapped in the rift, but the rest of the fleet is converging on Theta 7's southern sector. They're coming for the colony directly." Mara's chest tightened. The Valiant could annihilate fleets, but it could not protect every corner of Theta 7. Civilians were exposed, shelters were failing, and even the ingenious orbital drones could only buy seconds. Every human life weighed on him, every choice a potential death sentence if miscalculated. "Prepare the secondary shield arrays," he ordered. "Evacuate civilians to the core shelters. Time is a blade. We cannot afford hesitation." The humans below obeyed with grim determination. Engineers worked tirelessly to stabilize failing energy conduits, while families clung to one another in tight corridors, whispering prayers into the thin air. Mara could feel their fear, their courage, their hope, an electric current threading through the colony like lifeblood. Yet even amidst this coordinated effort, Mara wrestled with doubt. Could humanity survive this? Could a single dreadnought, no matter how magnificent, shield a colony from extinction, the weight of centuries pressed against his spine. History had not been kind to isolated human worlds in the Outer Rim, and then came the counterattack, a massive volley of energy pulses streaking across the void, aimed directly at Theta 7's surface. The shields flickered under the onslaught, and Mara felt his stomach tighten. Every second counted, every decision carried the weight of lives. "Commander," Kale said, voice trembling, "if they breach the southern sector, the core shelters won't hold." Mara closed his eyes, fighting against the surge of helplessness. "We survive," he whispered. "We always have, and we always will." The Valiant responded with precision. Its weapons flared in coordinated brilliance, slicing through the incoming ships, but it was not enough to shield the colony entirely. Mara realized the fight demanded human ingenuity, not just brute force. "Deploy the canyon decoys," he ordered. "Force them into narrow channels. Use the terrain. Use every advantage." The orbital drones surged like living instruments of war, weaving between the canyon ridges, drawing the alien ships into traps they could not anticipate. Explosions ripped through the void as the fleet faltered, but the southern sector still shuddered under sustained bombardment. Mara's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. Humans were cornered, but they were never defeated. And then, amid the chaos, a quiet moment of awe. Mara caught sight of a young engineer praying softly, hands pressed together, eyes closed. It was subtle, almost hidden, yet powerful. Somewhere in the vastness of the universe, a current of order threaded through the chaos, a presence that had guided them to survive thus far. He whispered to himself, "Not luck. Someone wanted us to live." But even as hope flickered, Mara faced an internal conflict that threatened to overwhelm him. Could humans endure beyond miracles? Could they survive if the dreadnought faded back into legend? His species' resilience had carried them across centuries, yet the pressure of the moment weighed heavy. Failure was not an option, but doubt was a constant companion. He clenched his fists. "We endure," he said aloud. "Not because it is easy, not because it is assured, but because we are human." The Valiant roared across the void, a colossus of steel and will, targeting the southern vanguard with surgical precision. Ships erupted into firestorms, debris scattering like starlight across the black canvas. Mara watched, awe and fear intertwined, as the dreadnought carved a path through impossible odds. Below, humans held their breath, hearts hammering in rhythm with the pulse of the Valiant. The orbital drone struck with deadly accuracy, trapping the alien vanguard and giving the colony a precious window of safety. Mara allowed himself a brief exhale, though he knew the war was far from over. Humanity had survived the edge of desperation, but the trial was only beginning. Courage, ingenuity, and faith, these were the tools that would carry them through. And somewhere in the void, Mara felt it, the unyielding pulse of humanity, refusing to bow, refusing to fade. The void was alive with fire and destruction, a theater of war painted in flashes of molten metal and the screams of alien engines. Theta 7's canyons quaked under the pulse of orbital bombardments. But Mara Velasquez stood unwavering on the observation deck, eyes fixed on the horizon of chaos. The alien fleet was still vast, and the flagship trapped in the rift could not contain them all. "Commander," Kale's voice broke through the tension, "the flagship is signaling. They're attempting to coordinate a counteroffensive. If they synchronize with the remaining frigates, the southern sector could collapse." Mara's jaw clenched. Coordination, precision, timing. These were the hallmarks of human ingenuity, but now it was tested at its highest limits. One misstep and the colony would be crushed. He turned to the tactical feed, mapping the fleet's positions with meticulous care. Every movement had to be anticipated. Every decision weighed against lives he was sworn to protect. "Deploy the canyon ambush arrays," he ordered. "Force them into the choke points. Use the terrain. Make them fight humanity's way, not theirs." Below, the humans obeyed with grim determination. Engineers ran along fractured corridors, reinforcing energy nodes and stabilizing shields, while civilians huddled, clutching one another in whispered prayers. Mara could feel the collective heartbeat of survival threading through the colony. Humans were not passive. They adapted, they improvised, they endured. Above, the Valiant roared through the void, a living embodiment of human will. Its engines glowed like liquid fire, illuminating the darkness with a radiance born of courage and defiance. Mara's eyes followed its trajectory, heart pounding as it engaged the alien flagship. The dreadnought's weapons fired with deadly precision, tearing into the alien hulls. But the flagship's remaining escorts maneuvered with frightening tenacity. Mara felt the weight of centuries pressing on him. The responsibility of leadership, the burden of survival, the fragile thread connecting every human life in Theta 7 to the outcome of this battle. Doubt nipped at the edges of his mind, whispering that even miracles could falter. Yet he refused to yield. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not bow. Prepare synchronized drone strikes, he commanded. Coordinate with the Valiant. Target every weak point simultaneously. This is our moment, our defiance. Kyle nodded, fingers dancing across her holographic interface. Understood, sir. Theta 7 will survive. The humans below held their breath as the orbital drones surged into action, weaving between canyon ridges, forcing the alien fleet into precisely calculated kill zones. Mara's pulse quickened with each successful strike, yet he remained vigilant. Survival was not just about firepower. It was about timing, ingenuity, and the courage to act when everything seemed lost. The flagship screamed in fury as the Valiant unleashed another concentrated salvo, crippling its engines and cutting off escape routes. Debris scattered across the void like stardust, and for a moment, Mara allowed himself to feel the thrill of victory. But the human spirit was never content with complacency. There were more ships, more threats, more lives to protect. He glanced at Kale, eyes meeting hers across the flickering hologram. We push forward, he said. We fight, we endure, and we protect every life. That is what it means to be human. Below, a young engineer whispered a prayer as she stabilized a failing shield generator. Mara heard it, felt it, understood it. It was not luck. They survived because humanity fought, because ingenuity met courage, because faith threaded through action like invisible veins of light. And then, through the chaos, a subtle sign, a faint distortion in the void, almost imperceptible, like the universe itself holding its breath. Mara felt it deep in his chest, a quiet affirmation that their struggle was not in vain. Not luck, not chance, something greater, guiding them, weaving order through the chaos. The Valiant fired again, obliterating the remaining corvettes in the rift, while Mara coordinated the final drone strikes to seal the southern approach. One by one, the alien ships were neutralized, forced into the canyon traps that had been meticulously planned. Theta 7's southern sector held, battered but intact. Mara exhaled, a momentary release of tension, though his vigilance remained. The humans of Theta 7 had survived against impossible odds. They had adapted, endured, and demonstrated the relentless ingenuity that defined their species, and yet he knew the fight was not fully won. The alien command fleet still loomed, the flagship still threatened, and the universe remained indifferent. He whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "Not luck. Someone wanted us to survive." Below, civilians whispered prayers of gratitude. Above, the Valiant drifted like a sentinel of steel and defiance, humanity's will made manifest. Mara realized in that quiet, dangerous moment that the human spirit had already triumphed. It was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater, a testament to courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender. And as the last corvettes fell into silence, Mara understood. Humanity had struck back, and the universe would remember. Theta 7 shivered under the aftermath of the first wave. Smoke and dust rose from shattered canyons, yet through the haze, the humans of the colony clung to life. Mara Velasquez stood at the observation deck, shoulders tense, eyes scanning the battered horizon. The alien fleet was fragmented, their flagship crippled, but the command vessels still lingered at the edge of Theta 7's orbit, poised to strike. The colony was far from safe. Kyle's hologram flickered beside him, tension etched into every line of her face. "Sir, the command fleet is preparing a final coordinated strike. If they break through, the southern sector and the core shelters will be destroyed." Mara's jaw clenched. The Valiant had already proven its power, yet raw strength alone would not secure survival. The humans of Theta 7 had endured through strategy, ingenuity, and defiance. It was time to combine every advantage. Every drone, every canyon trap, every civilian-engineered defense would matter. "Prepare for the final engagement," Mara ordered. "Synchronize with the dreadnought. Focus fire on the command vessels. Force them into the kill zones. Every human life counts. Every calculation matters." Below, Engineers raced to stabilize failing systems, civilians whispered prayers, and soldiers readied themselves for the inevitable clash. Fear was palpable, but so was resolve. Mara could feel it, a current threading through every human heart. The unyielding pulse of defiance, the certainty that humanity would not bow. The Valiant shifted in the void, its colossal silhouette casting long shadows over the alien ships. Mara's eyes followed its trajectory, noting every calculation, every movement, every calculated strike. The dreadnought fired with precision that seemed almost prescient, tearing through alien hulls, forcing the command vessels into the canyon traps they had meticulously avoided. Mara felt the weight of responsibility pressing against him like gravity itself. Even as humans endured, he knew the universe did not bend for hope alone. Every victory came at a cost, every action a gamble. Could they survive this final assault? Could humans prevail when the odds seemed insurmountable? "Deploy the canyon traps now," he commanded. "Timing is everything. Make them pay for every meter." The orbital drones surged, weaving through the canyon ridges with lethal precision. The alien fleet faltered, caught between human ingenuity and the relentless power of the Valiant. Explosions lit the void, scattering debris across the black canvas of space. Mara's chest tightened with both fear and awe. Fear for the humans below, awe at the raw defiance of his species made manifest in steel and willpower. Amid the chaos, Mara felt a subtle presence, almost imperceptible. It was not luck, it was more than coincidence. A quiet intelligence, threading order through the maelstrom, guiding the humans toward survival. He whispered almost reverently, "Not luck. Someone wanted us to live." The command vessels attempted a desperate maneuver, but it was too late. The Valiant unleashed a devastating salvo, obliterating the flagship and crippling the remaining command ships. The void lit up with the fire of annihilation, and the alien fleet began to scatter, their cohesion destroyed, their morale shattered. Mara allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but he remained vigilant. The humans of Theta 7 had survived, yet the universe was vast and threats still lingered beyond the horizon. Victory was never absolute, only temporary, fragile, earned through courage, ingenuity, and unyielding defiance. Below, civilians whispered thanks, engineers repaired systems, and soldiers maintained their watch. Mara felt the pulse of humanity, resilient and unbroken, threading through the colony like a living force. They had survived not because of luck, but because they embodied the essence of their species. Clever, courageous, relentless. He turned to Kyle, eyes burning with resolve. "Theta 7 survives, and we will rebuild, stronger, smarter, and unbroken. This is who we are." The dreadnought, colossal and indomitable, loomed in the void, a sentinel of human will. Its engines pulsed like a heartbeat, echoing the courage of every human who had fought, prayed, or endured on Theta 7. Mara realized that the Valiant was more than a machine. It was humanity itself, manifest in steel, fire, and purpose, and somewhere, in the quiet recesses of the cosmos, he felt it, the subtle guiding hand of order and mercy. Not overt, not preached, but present. Humanity had endured because they had fought, because they had believed, and because they had refused to surrender. And as the last remnants of the alien fleet fled into the void, Mara knew the humans of Theta 7 had survived, and their fire would not be extinguished. The void had fallen into an uneasy silence. Theta 7 trembled, battered but alive beneath the scars of war. Mara Velasquez stood at the observation deck, shoulders tense, eyes scanning the horizon. The alien fleet was in retreat. Their command vessels crippled, their forces scattered like leaves in a storm. Yet the victory felt fragile, temporary, a moment caught between survival and the infinite unknown. Kale's hologram flickered beside him, her face etched with exhaustion and awe. "Sir, the fleet is retreating. Theta 7, it's safe, for now." Mara allowed himself a slow breath, though the tension in his chest did not fully ease. Survival was never final, never guaranteed. The humans of Theta 7 had endured because of courage, ingenuity, and defiance. But the universe was vast, and legends like the Valiant would fade again into myth. Still, hope lingered in the hearts of those who remained. "Not for now," Mara said, voice steady, "but because we fought, because we refused to surrender, because we are human." Below, the colony exhaled collectively. Engineers patched systems, soldiers maintained watch, civilians whispered prayers of gratitude. Mara saw the determination etched on every face, a reflection of humanity's stubborn, unyielding will. They had survived impossible odds not because of luck, but because they had claimed their fate through courage, creativity, and unity. The Valiant drifted like a sentinel above the colony, its massive engines glowing faintly, a heartbeat in the void. Mara felt a profound awe tempered with responsibility. The dreadnought had arrived when the humans of Theta 7 needed it most, yet it was not a savior in isolation. Victory had been a collaboration, humans on the ground, drones in orbit, the dreadnought as an instrument of human will, and the subtle guidance of something greater threading through the chaos. Mara turned to Kyle. "Prepare the message," he said. "Theta 7 survives. Let the Outer Rim hear that humanity endures, that we do not abandon our own, and let the fleet know that we are not to be trifled with." Kyle nodded, fingers moving swiftly over the holographic interface. Mara watched as the signal was encoded and broadcast across light years, a declaration of defiance, hope, and the indomitable human spirit. In the quiet aftermath, Mara allowed himself a moment of reflection. The weight of command, the fear, the loss, and the relentless tension, all of it coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. Humans survived not because the odds favored them, but because they refused to yield. Courage had prevailed where despair might have reigned. Ingenuity had outmaneuvered brute strength. Faith, subtle, quiet, almost imperceptible, had guided them like a whisper threading through the universe. He gazed at the stars, distant points of light that had witnessed centuries of human struggle. Somewhere in that infinite expanse, the faint pulse of order, of balance, of subtle divine orchestration could be felt. Mara did not need to name it. He only needed to acknowledge it. Humanity had survived, and that survival was a testament to more than luck. It was proof of the relentless human will. The colony below stirred as life returned to a fragile normal. Children laughed softly in dim corridors. Engineers exchanged relieved glances, and soldiers shared quiet words of camaraderie. Mara walked among them, nodding, acknowledging, absorbing the quiet joy that followed terror. This was why they fought, why they endured, why they refused to surrender. Above, the Valiant loomed, colossal and silent, a monument to human defiance and ingenuity. Mara allowed himself a rare, private smile. Humanity had triumphed, not perfectly, not without cost, but with courage and unity. They had stared into the void and refused to blink. He turned to Kale one final time. "This is not the end," he said, "but it is proof. Proof that humanity never abandons its own. Proof that hope survives even in the darkest reaches of the cosmos. And proof that we endure." Kale's hologram flickered, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, sir. Humanity endures." Mara gazed once more at the stars, feeling the quiet presence of something vast, guiding, unseen. It was subtle, like a hand in the wind or a pulse beneath the heartbeat of the universe. Not overt, not demanded, but present. Humanity had survived against impossible odds, and that survival had been witnessed, not just by the Valiant, not just by the humans of Theta 7, but by the universe itself. And somewhere, in the infinite silence of space, Mara whispered, a prayer and a declaration intertwined. Not luck. Someone wanted us to live. The dreadnought remained above, a sentinel, a guardian, and a symbol. Theta 7 was alive, scarred but unbroken. Humanity had triumphed, not because the stars favored them, but because they had refused to surrender, because they had fought, because they had endured. And as the stars watched over the battered colony, humanity's fire burned brighter than ever, unbroken, unyielding, and eternal.